So far today, at least 13 rockets have been fired from Lebanon at Israel. Hamas has thanked the Houthis for yesterday's attack and told them that it causes real damage, even if it didn't kill anybody. It does help the cause, which of course it does, especially considering Israel hasn't responded. And Israelis are out on the streets today protesting. What are they protesting about? Are they protesting about Israel's lack of response, not just since yesterday, but since October 7th in Lebanon, and in Yemen, a lack of a response, sufficient response, one that prevents this from happening again? Is it a protest against the refusal to act in Gaza with full force to punish the Palestinian people for the war that they started and to pretend that it's just Hamas? No, the latest protests are about Gideon Sa'ar, former minister, now in the opposition, who is rumored to be joining the Israeli government as defense minister instead of Gallant, who is rumored to be fired soon. That is the protest. That protest is it's a protest that demands. It is the people who are demanding, who are protesting on Saturdays, demanding that Israel give in to Hamas's demands. These are, we've spoken about the weekly protests that essentially take to the streets. These people take to the streets to demand to repeat Hamas's demands, and to claim that this is somehow good for Israel, good for the hostages, which in the short term, way, it very well might be. It might be that hostages get released who otherwise won't, but it guarantees future hostage taking. It gives victory to Hamas, and that is what Israelis, many Israelis are arguing for, repeating the almost exact same rhetoric as we see, from some trolls here in the chat, maybe not the ones today, but from pro-Hamas protesters around the world, repeating the rhetoric of those who want the state of Israel exterminated, with everybody in Israel exterminated, including those who are protesting, including those who have been part of the peace movement for decades, many of whom were slaughtered on October 7th. So why are so many Israelis so anti-Israel and openly anti-Israel and supporting Israel's enemy at a time of war? Welcome to the Daily Objective. Daniel, your initial thoughts on these protests and on what's going on in Israel.
So for a while now, I've been trying to maybe find one sort of unifying theme when it comes to these protesters, and I cannot necessarily find the right term for it. I was thinking there is a certain amount of naivete, but I think there is something more. There is something, the sort of you're so far off the fact that you're not even acknowledging the reality of basically what's going on. Because try to imagine that let's say people in Ukraine had a similar attitude towards the war going on right now that the Israelis have. Would Ukraine even still exist? Would they still be able to basically hold the Russian offensive off? Would they be able to even hold on to existence to the extent they can right now? Because again, as you mentioned, Houthis are attacking Israel any chance they get. We've talked about them recently. There was this supposed attack. You had attack coming out of Iran. You had maybe. I'm guessing we still have a potential response coming after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. I can imagine they still use it as they still have one we can send rockets towards Israel without consequence card. Uh, and you have, attacks coming out of Lebanon, and of course, Hamas is still in power to some extent. There are still attacks coming out of there. You have terrorist attacks coming from Jordan just recently. You have terrorist attacks coming out of the sort of Palestinian-controlled territories in the West Bank, and Israelis want peace. And I can understand that to some extent. If you are in this situation, yeah, you just you just want peace. You just want to be left alone. And I think there's nothing necessarily wrong about just wanting to be left alone. That's understandable, and many of them basically, I think, do support, getting the hostages back as a sort of, it is an end in itself, getting the hostages back, but also, part of the sort of hostage deal would be some sort of ceasefire, would be probably, especially since if the all hostages go back, the pressure from outside would probably be so high that, yeah, this conflict, specifically the invasion of Gaza after October 7th, would basically be over, and many of Israeli probably would view it as, this is an end to this, and that's it. But yeah, I think there is a naivete in that, basically hoping that, if we can just get this one ceasefire, that's it, nothing bad will happen after.
Yeah, and thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. I want to kind of assume the best among these protesters. It's very difficult to do so. In the cases of, some hostage family members, it's maybe less difficult, but it's becoming more and more difficult since if they said, I've said on this channel, if it was, a loved one of mine, I would say let the world burn, at least save but I would say it in those terms. Like yeah, but they don't say that. They say this as if this is something that is not incredibly damaging to Israel. And one thing I would encourage people to do when they think when they think that way is to listen to the people who don't pretend like they are pro-Israel and want this deal from a pro-Israel perspective. Listen, listen to people, like this troll in the chat. Yeah, and I do agree when people criticize the amount of time I give such low lives. But here, this is, I think, something that's relevant. You were talking about Ukraine, and this person says Ukraine didn't steal its country from the natives, and I hope people hear out the pro-Hamas side when they say this. I would be interested in again polling the just random protester in London or in New York or in any Western country and ask them, do you think Israelis are stealing the land and like in Israel? Let's leave aside the West Bank, although I don't think we should overall, but let's is Tel Aviv stolen land? And I guarantee you the vast majority would say yes. So that's the first thing If you're trying to appease such people, they are racists. They are bigots. They are exactly the same and should be treated exactly the same as anybody in the UK who says black people should go back to Africa because it's identical. Look, Israelis certainly most Israelis today in Israel were born there. We can argue about many historical inaccuracies in the claim that Jews stole anybody's land. It's of course, where are Jews not stealing people's land according to these people? And they'll usually say Poland, where Jews were 90% of Jews were exterminated. That's why they want Jews to go back there. They're hoping maybe that can be revived. So remember, listen to those people. Listen to the Ceasefire Now crowd in the world. If you are becoming part of the Ceasefire Now crowd, listen to what your brothers in arms are saying around the world. They want a ceasefire now, and they acknowledge why they want it. They acknowledge that it is a pause. It's not an end to the war. A ceasefire doesn't mean peace between Israel and Hamas or whoever you think there's going to be peace with. It means what Hamas says it means, which is right now they can't kill as many Jews as they'd like to, so they need a pause, they need to regroup, they need to rearm, and when they're ready, they will restart things, and when they're not able to continue, they will ask for another pause, and that will continue. And in that way, Hamas and Lebanon through Hezbollah, and Yemen through the Houthis, and whatever random Islamist in Jordan or Syria and anybody else supported by Iran or not supported by Iran can get away with, well, and in that way chip away at Israel's existence until, as Hamas has said, there are no more Jews left to kill. Are these the people that you think you should be in agreement with? Again, in agreement with on specifically this war. You are in agreement with the people who say you deserve to die. And that is my message to the Israelis participating in these protests. I'm sure they won't hear the message, and if they did, they would dismiss it and treat me as more of an enemy than they treat the people who want to kill them.
Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of like stolen land. So, just someone brought up example of Ukraine specifically. Even with something like Ukraine, I mean, depends what you find as a starting point. But if you take something like Kiev and Rus, for example, well, those were not native to that specific land. The ruling dynasty, the Rurikids, came from Sweden, basically, or from that sort of area. You had the Great Migration. You have people moving from everywhere. Hungarians are not natives. Those came from far from far Asia. You had many people going around, and you have to remember all land is stolen. You know the We only discovered the idea of property rights, the idea that you own property, that you have this, and because you worked on it, or because you're there, you actually do own it, and no one can come and take it by force. That's a new invention, basically in what, 17th, 18th centuries, something like that. It took time. It took time and it took innovation to actually come up with that idea. And before that, and even long after that, even right now, many nations are just stealing land. And it's, after some point, you just have to say, okay, we are here, we are here, and we have to do something with this situation. Again, this sort of like, we will return to some sort of, and then there's even the question like how far along you go. Like, what was there before Israel? Ottoman Empire, was that some sort of like freedom respecting nation? Even the Arab population itself, they don't originate in that specific area. They also came from somewhere else. Again, you're just stuck in this like infinite
Well,
loop of.
yeah, but I have to say the point of all land is stolen land. I mean, first of all, most land is unused, so it's not stolen. It doesn't belong to anybody until a human being uses it. And this is the thing that it's not. It took us so long to come up with it. It's people identified certain things in reality and how humans relate to reality, and discovered the idea of property rights. And many people still haven't. And anybody who says that Israel is stolen land is in the category of hasn't. By the way, anybody who says that the settlements are an obstacle to peace as such also doesn't recognize property rights, because settlements are and certainly doesn't think that peace is possible while Jews live, because settlements are almost all of them built on unused land. The problem is it's Jews. There is no such problem in Israel, by the way. 20% of the Israeli population are Arabs. There's certainly a problem with the government not allowing people to build freely, Jews or Arabs. And we have that problem in this country where government kind of legally owns the land, so you have to have permission, which you shouldn't have when it's unused land. But that's what it is. That's what the settlements are. They're unused land. The problem is, this supposed um, Palestinian state, future Palestinian state, which would supposedly live in peace and security side by side with Israel, has to be Jew-free, according to the other side, which tells you how serious they are about the prospect of ever having peace with the Jewish state. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat.
So also, although let me just quickly maybe comment on this a bit more, because someone in the chat is saying this land belonged to Britain. I mean, again, that's sort of like the role of government is not to own land or hold land. What and I think Israel in many ways has done it properly. Jews started moving into that region, long before basically Britain was there, and started buying land, started owning land, and starting building on it, started making something out of it. And the role of a government is not to come in and own the land. It's to recognize the fact these people are here, and these people have bought the land, or are here, are doing something with the land, and they own it. And even when Israel was founded, it recognized it would have been pretty much 50-50 state. It would have had about 50% Jews and I think 50% Arabs, or I think like 40% Arabs and 10% something else. But again, that was sort of okay, because they would just recognize everyone's rights like it is right now. Arabs have their rights recognized. It's not like, Arabs in Israel proper are just, randomly their stuff gets taken over by Jews or something like that. No, their property is recognized and as everyone else's. And that's the sort of standard. And that's the standard that should be. But, sort of, or if you want to comment on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, Arab Israelis live better than Arabs anywhere else in the Middle East, and certainly in terms of the recognition of their rights, their rights are protected. Again, not to the ideal degree. No country in the world does that, but to a degree, which is unique in the Middle East. Bonnie asked earlier, is there an actual deal pending that the demonstrators want to happen? No, I don't think so. I mean, there are all the reports daily on progress being made in the negotiation. But look, Netanyahu is giving more and more. There was a deal in November. The terms have changed. That deal was one hostage for 3 terrorists, none of whom have blood on their hands. So none of whom have successfully succeeded in killing any Israelis. Now the deal, last I heard, it was closer to 1,000 terrorists, with about 100 of them with blood on their hands. It's a very first of all, every deal, the very act of negotiation is favorable towards Hamas. This is just even more favorable. But look, Hamas moves the goalposts constantly, and they see the pressure from Biden. They see the pressure from the rest of the international community, although I think that certainly should be ignored pretty much entirely by Israel. And they see the pressure from within. Hamas loves these protesters. They'll kill them, but they love what they're doing right now because they are serving Hamas's PR machine more than anything else, more than Biden even himself. A few things have changed, and we've covered pretty much nothing but the war in the past 11 months. So you can go back to see us talking about how things will change, and they have changed in that direction. But things have changed from the days after October 7th, when Israelis were talking about victory. We're talking about we can't do this whole thing that we always do, where we worry about innocent civilians, even though we know Hamas hides behind their civilians because they want their own civilians to die because of what this does PR-wise, and how useful idiots in the West lap it up. So it's gone from victory to a deal, to a deal which, again, is capitulation to Hamas. It's gone to protesters saying Netanyahu isn't giving in enough to the enemy. And a lot of other things have changed, not just the rhetoric. So Hamas has used, other than actual warfare, psychological warfare as well, in releasing videos of the hostages. The Israeli media was really responsible about this early on. They wouldn't show these videos. Nobody would allow Hamas to use the hostages in such a way to create this internal turmoil in Israel. That has also changed. These videos are now being shown, and they're being shown, and the hostages are being quoted saying things like, one of them said, Netanyahu, I'm counting on you to make a deal. Or another one of the six who were murdered a couple of weeks ago, when the IDF was closing in on where they were being kept, said something like, you gave 1,000 for Gilad Shalit. Am I not? Is my life not worth as much? Something to that effect. And that's quoted by these protesters. I mean, they have no shame in quoting something that they know Hamas either wrote for them or gave them the guidelines, and again, would not release if they, they would not release it if they said, look, attack, kill them, because they are telling you that this deal is temporary and is a step in the direction of what they're trying to achieve, which is more and more October 7th until there are no more Jews left to kill. Why would you ever consider making a deal? If a hostage said that, do you think it will be shown to the world? Of course not. And yet, these protesters use that in their propaganda. They are becoming less and less. They're dropping the pretense more and more of not realizing that they are pro Hamas.
Yeah, and something also that I think Bonnie has said earlier uh, about my comment that basically I think that these protesters sort of just want peace, just want to be left alone and hope this might be an end to it. And she says, but it's not an end to this. They must know this. I mean, depends how well the Hamas propaganda works. What have we been hearing from not just pro-Hamas propaganda, but also, pro-Palestinian Authority propaganda? If you just stop the settlements, if you just get out, if you just, stop, controlling the border with Gaza, if you just completely pull out, then there will be peace. If you just stop, then there will be peace. And we've seen the opposite. Anytime Israel does, you know, pulls out of Gaza, they get they get rockets coming out of Gaza as soon as possible. Whenever they try to do any negotiations, whenever they try to pull, make reconciliation, as someone in the chat has said, they get the absolute opposite, because it's not about the state for Palestinians. That's just not what the goal of the Palestinian is. It is getting rid of the Jews. That is the goal. And if people were to actually realize like this is what it's about, then you'd know there's no peace they could be made. There's no two-state solution that can be done when one side is fundamentally opposed to the to the fact that you should also exist in the area. And as long as you have this, there's no there's no peace that can be had. Again, if you had a neighbor that wants to kill you, how could you ever exist with them? How could you ever talk about talk about peace in if any way, if that was what he just wants to do and that's his goal? You can give them aid, you can give them more land back, you can you restore let's go even to the original UN plan. We can go to that. Nothing would be solve this, because that's not what the issue is.
Yeah, I'll again address something the troll says, because they mentioned something like, who would have thought that Israel would take over a year to defeat 30,000 terrorists. And by the way, these people are so automatically inclined to not tell the truth. It has 11 months is less than a year, but yeah, we can assume it's not going to be over before October 8th, when this statement will become true. And yeah, this is something, again, Israel should pay close attention to, because this is what Israel gets from the people it is trying to appease, by sacrificing soldiers in order to defend Palestinian civilians, by avoiding hitting targets that they know would help get them closer to achieving the goals in the war, because there are so-called innocent civilians there. Israel is sacrificing victory for the sake of the enemy. And the Palestinian people are saying clearly, this means we are winning. And their supporters around the world say clearly, this means Israel is not strong enough. Israel is giving the Palestinians victory militarily and in terms of morale and how Israel is viewed internationally. These are steps, again, I think when the state of Israel, I unfortunately don't think Israel will do what's right, and I don't think it has many more years left. And when this is looked at historically, people will have to say, look, this is a country that could have lived in peace and security by defeating its enemies militarily, by believing the enemy when they said, all we want to do is exterminate you people, and instead said, no, we need to protect these people who say they want to exterminate us. This is unfortunately the very sad state of affairs. We will continue to argue against Israel's policy of supporting its enemies, but we'll continue to do that until it's too late. Daniel, parting thoughts.
Just earlier, I'd like to maybe amend something I said because I said all land is stolen. What I meant by is, if you go into the past, every single area was sort of like large area was like taken over by force by someone else, and you have it with everything. But at some point, we realized, okay, someone is here now, and someone is doing something with that property, and killing each other over every single thing is not, for one, a rational way to live, and also it's not really prosperous way to live. So if we recognize the fact that we as humans need to use property, we need to have property, and we need to use our reason and use it with the property to make value, to make something greater, that's the way we make skyscrapers, basically.
Well, much of the international support for the Palestinians is encouraged, let's say, by the way the war is reported on. Few outlets do so in as strongly anti-Israel a way as the BBC. We will be talking again about them on the reality show, specifically about Jeremy Bowen and his role in this. In an hour after the reality show, the mock trials return. I will tell you more about it on the reality show. I will be playing the villain. This is for members, Platinum and higher, and Inner Circle YouTube members. I hope you join that. That's going to be good. The reality show is also going to be good, and that's free, starting in a couple of minutes. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes.